अगति साय नमः। क्रिया बाबाजी नमो। Good evening everyone, Namaste. My name is Gurudasan. I am from AVM, Agasthyavalam, and I am happy to be meeting you on this evening to talk about yoga, in specific classical or traditional yoga as we know it. Now, before we go into discussing about yoga, I would like to start by asking some very simple questions that would trickle our thinking process. First is, what do we need? What does every one of us want? What is the motivation for every single action that we perform? It could be a small action, a trivial action, or it could be something big like planning for a wedding or planning to get a job, to buy a house, to buy a vehicle. It could be anything, or it could be as trivial as going out in the evening to get a snack or a coffee or meeting with friends. What drives us to do every single action that we perform on a day-to-day basis? If we think about it, there could be only two basic motivations for anything that we do. Either it is driven by desire or it is driven by fear. And in both the cases, they are just the two sides of the same coin. And why do we desire something? Say, I want to buy a BMW car. I lust after the car. It's my dream car. So what happens? Why do I feel the need to buy a BMW car? And if I end up saving enough money to buy a BMW car and I end up buying it, what do I get from it? Same applies for many different scenarios as well. Say we want to be in a relationship. We either like this guy or like this girl, and we want to be together with them. We want to marry them. So why do we want to marry them? Why do we want to be with them? Or we aspire for a career, we aspire for a job, we aspire to join a particular company and work for them, which we believe will be a high point in our career and it will be an added weightage to our resume. So we think that that is going to be giving us high prospects on a long-term basis. But still, why do we want to go to that company? Why do we want to go and get that job? If you think about it, for all of these things, the very basic need is happiness. We look for happiness. When I am buying a car, I believe that buying a car will make me happy. When we are in a relationship, we believe that being in a relationship with that person is what will make us happy. And when we aspire for a job, we think that that will make us happy once we get the job. So the basic understanding here is that all these different things, whatever may be the wishes that we have, is where our happiness lies. Basically, the understanding here is the happiness is lying outside us in the different circumstances or in the different things or in the different people that we meet on a daily basis. So, if we take happiness itself, it is an emotion. I think that's common, we all understand that, right? But is happiness the only emotion? There are multiple other emotions that are available. So I can be angry, I can be sad, I can be sorrow, I can feel disappointed, I can feel worthless, I can feel like laughing, I can feel bored, I can feel like loving, I can feel satisfied, I can feel content, I can feel disgusted. So there are many triggers that we can find in our day-to-day life that can trigger any of these emotions. But then we only seek happiness. We don't really want to have any of the other experiences or other emotions like that are negative in nature, such as anger, sorrow, disappointment, disgust, etc. We only want to be happy. Why do you think that is? The real reason is happiness is our true nature, our very own nature, which we have forgotten. And directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, we are trying to get back to our source, which is happiness. So, to understand it a little deeper, if we consider our existence itself, the Siddhas and the Yogis have divided it on a very broad, high-level basis that we don't only exist in the physical level. There are also two more layers, high-level classification of layers of existence. So one is what they call as a subtle body, and then there is another that is even more subtle, which they call it as the causal body. Right? The causal body or the spiritual body is what we call as the Anandamaya Kosha. It is the very essence of our existence, which we do not communicate with on a day-to-day basis. We don't realize it or recognize it or experience it on a day-to-day basis consciously. However, we always return to the causal body in our deep sleep. That's why sleep refreshes us. The causal body or the Anandamaya Kosha is very blissful in nature, unconditionally. It does not depend on my car, it does not depend on my job, it does not depend on my relationship I have with people, it does not depend on how my day went in the office. Whatever be the case, once I come back home, I go into sleep. The sleep quality, I'm not talking about the dream state here, but the deep sleep. The deep sleep is always joyous and pleasant for us, and that is the nature of causal body. And then we have the subtle body. The subtle body is a combination of three different koshas. The three koshas are the mental body, the vital body, and also the intellectual body, which are in Sanskrit called as Manomaya Kosha, which is the mental body, Pranamaya Kosha, which is the vital body or the emotion body or even the energy body, and then Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is the intellectual body. So, if you take away the subtle body and the causal body, what remains is the physical body, which we are familiar with on a day-to-day basis. Our identity, we limit ourselves to this physical body, and if somebody has a little higher awareness, then they will limit their identity to the physical body and their thought process and the personality, which is little bit of the subtle body and the physical body. So this mind-body consciousness is what we call as ego. So here by the word ego, I am not telling about something that is referring to self-worth or self-respect or the pride that we have. I am not talking in that sense, what we traditionally use the word ego for. Here by the word ego, what I mean is the very identification of ourselves with this body-mind personality, which is also called as ahankara in Sanskrit. So, why do we have to think about this ahankara or the ego? Like I said, we exist in three different layers. Our existence can be divided into three different parts. One is the physical, one is the subtle, and one is the blissful, that is the Anandamaya Kosha. And like I said, the Anandamaya Kosha is our innermost and the very essence of our existence, and the very nature of it is always blissful and always happy. If that is the case, then why do we feel miserable at times? Why do we get angry? Why do we get disappointed and sorrow, sad? And why do we worry so much? Why do we fear so much? The reason is we have forgotten our identity with the causal body. and we limit ourselves to the physical body and the mental body and the emotion body. So the nature of the mind is always to keep generating thoughts. That is the nature of our mind, we can't change that. So if there's nothing to think about, the mind will throw us some memories from the past. If those memories are happy memories, then we'll feel happy. If those memories are sad or disappointing, then even in the present when we are recollecting that, our mood changes. We become dull, we become disappointed, or we experience the same emotion that we went through when the actual event happened in the past, which led us to the same set of emotions. And then there is this emotion body. Once again, mind and emotion, they work very closely with each other. Thoughts can trigger emotions, and the emotions can trigger thoughts and memories as well. So they are in our subconscious, which is, you can consider it as your storeroom or your basement in your house, where we put all the unnecessary things, but we don't throw it away. They are still there. All the garbage is still there in the subconscious. Now what happens is, because of our limited identity with this mind and emotion, which is always changing, and our limited identification of our existence to this physical body, any changes in these three bodies will have a direct impact on the state of our mood, on the state of our consciousness and what we experience. So if the physical body is suffering from an ailment, then we naturally feel dull, we feel low in energy, we don't feel so enthusiastic, we want to just take rest. If the mental body is in pain, if something happened in the office, if the boss just yelled at us for something that we didn't do, and we are just angry and disappointed all at the same time, that you cannot even talk back to your boss. So that state of mind continues to hold sway of our entire day, and it spoils our entire mood. And even worse, because of the change in our mood, it also affects the people that are around us. Now, if we can, in a particular way, distance ourselves from this physical body and the mental body, that is the mind-body consciousness, and identify ourselves with the causal body or the Anandamaya Kosha, then we can remain happy all the time, irrespective of what is happening outside. This is not to mean that we should not handle the circumstances in our lives, or we should run away from the society or our responsibilities. What I am just saying here is that whatever happens, our happiness need not depend on the external situations. Rather, we can always get back to our source to get and be joyous and peaceful and happy all the time. So how do we do that? That is where the word yoga comes in. If we look at the word, the very word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root word called yog. Yog means union or uniting. So what do we unite here? We want to unite our mind and body personality with the causal body, with the Anandamaya Kosha, with the spiritual body. Once we unite with the spiritual body, what happens is we start to understand that we are no longer just the mind and body, we are also the spirit that is existing always. And we start to identify more and more with that essence of existence, which is the spirit itself, what people call as Jivatma or soul. And the more we start identifying ourselves with the spirit, something even wonderful happens. We discover that this spirit, this soul, our essence of this existence does not only exist within our body, the same spirit is existing within everybody else's body. And that is when we realize something even more fantastic. That is what some people call as nirvana, some people call it as self-realization. In yogic terms, they call it as samadhi, where our existence is realized and experienced in the entire cosmos, in the entire creation, that we are present not just within our body, but we are present in everyone else and everything else at the same time. So before we even go into that, how does yoga help one to identify more with the Anandamaya Kosha? There are different ways for it. And why are there different ways? In modern society, yoga has become a buzzword, especially in the West. It has become a fancy term or a lifestyle choice to say and claim that I do yoga, right? And there are hundreds of different yoga schools, hundreds of different traditions, hundreds of different lineages that are available. And all of them are teaching yoga in one form or other. Not complaining here about any of that. It's good to practice any form of yoga. At least it's something better than nothing. But then in India, when I say classical yoga, they grouped yoga into 4 different categories called margas. Marga means route or the path that we take. And why do we need different paths to attain the same destination or the same goal? If I say that, okay, how do I come to Kuala Lumpur? How do I come to KL town? So there is no single answer for this, right? It depends on the person who is asking the question and where that person wants to travel from. If the person is traveling from Ipoh, he has to take a different route. If the person is traveling from Johor, he has to take a different route. If somebody is traveling from Australia, he has to take a completely different route to reach Kuala Lumpur, right? Similarly, even for us to reach the goal of at least starting with the mind-body union with the Anandamaya Kosha, different people's maturity, their level of understanding and their state of existence is different. What works for one person will not work for the other person. So that's why there has been a number of different yoga methods that are there devised to help a person subdue this mind-body consciousness called ego. And classically these are categorized into 4, like I said before, and they are the Karma Marga or Karma Yoga, which is the path of action, the Bhakti Yoga or Bhakti Marga, which is the path of devotion, and then the Jnana Yoga or Jnana Marga, which is the path of wisdom or path of knowledge. And then we have something called Raja Yoga, or what they call as Kriya Yoga in many traditions, which is called the royal path of mind-body union with the spirit. So let me start describing a little bit about each of these paths and how they help. Right? So like I said, the goal of all these methods is to subdue the mind-body consciousness, that is the mind-body identity or the ego. So how do I subdue the ego? How do I subdue that I am the I am personality, that I am this body, I am this mind? How do I subdue that? So if you take the path of action, the Karma Yoga, Karma means action, and in this case it means disciplined action, right? So how does Karma Yoga help? Karma Yoga advises that through selfless service we can subdue yoga. Through selfless action we can subdue yoga. So when I say selfless action, it sounds quite simple, it doesn't sound so complicated, right? But then it's not as simple as we think. So when I say selfless service, when we do something, what is a service? When we do something for others without expecting anything in return, that is something that we call a service. Say there are downtrodden people, homeless people, say we are buying them food for lunch. We are not expecting anything in return from them. We are expecting any favor from them. So we would naturally think that it's a selfless act that we performed when we buy food for them. But then when we buy food for them, what in reality happens is they get the food and we get the satisfaction of having helped. Right? And that satisfaction comes out of the thought that I was able to provide food to a homeless person. And when the thought of I comes in, naturally that means the ego comes in. So because here by I am referring to this body and this mind. Because if that identity was not there, then there is no difference between the homeless person and myself. Only as long as I identify myself with this body and this mind, I will see the homeless person as something or someone different from me. I see that he is suffering and I would want to help him, which is a good thing. But then in return, what I do get is a satisfaction of having helped, which makes me feel happy. So once I experience that happiness, what do? So I keep doing this again and again. I try to increase helping more and more homeless people because I can get more and more happy. Correct? Now, this is really not selfless. Of course, we are not expecting any return in favor from the person who is getting the help, but actually our own action is giving us the benefit of what we wanted, which is satisfaction, self-worth, and also happiness for the time being. So when I say selfless service, what I clearly mean here is any action without the thought that I am the doer. Can we do any action without the thought that I am the doer? So that is what is selfless action. It need not just be selfless service, it need not just be service, it can be any action, even carrying out our own responsibilities towards our family, our friends, our colleagues, and our office and employers, being within the society and carrying out our responsibilities towards it without the thought that I am the doer. That is real selfless action, and that is what is taught in Karma Yoga. That is the attitude that one should develop in Karma Yoga. The more we do such actions, the more we start doing charity, doing actions not expecting anything in return, the more our ego gets subdued, and slowly and steadily we start realizing that I am not the doer, I am just an instrument through which these actions get done. And when we slowly start developing such consciousness, such attitude, naturally our ego gets subdued, and what remains is the pure consciousness. This is Karma Yoga, or what is called as Karma Marga, which was even preached to Arjuna by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Do your duty, do not expect the fruits in return. That is the essence of Karma Yoga. We talked about what is yoga and why we need yoga, and we started discussing about what is Karma Yoga, or what is the path of action. How can we subdue our ego by selfless action, and we discussed about what is selfless action. So just to bring it back, to summarize, selfless action is any action that we perform, not necessarily a charity, it's any action that we perform without the identity or the conscious thought that I am the doer. So that is a selfless action. And as we start performing more and more such selfless service and actions, naturally our ego will subdue, and this thought and understanding that I am not the doer but only an instrument will start forming a strong foundation within our state of existence. And through that we can subdue the body-mind personality, and we can reach that state of identification with the causal body, or the Anandamaya Kosha. Now the next marga, or the next part that I want to discuss about, is the path of devotion, which is called as Bhakti Yoga, or the Bhakti Marga. In India, it becomes little easy. As the civilization developed, people started having a deity, or understanding that there is someone greater than us. So when we have this thought, when we have this understanding that we believe in a particular God, it could be any God, it's irrespective of religion actually. It can be Muruga, it can be Krishna, it could be Shiva, it could be Agastya, it could be Babaji, it could be Jesus Christ, it could be the Holy Father, it could be Allah, it could be Buddha, it could be anybody, right? So once we have a faith, once we develop devotion towards something at the level of God, what happens in reality is that we are understanding and accepting that there is something that is bigger than us, there is something that is beyond us, and there is something that we can aspire to, right? And when that conscious thought comes in, when that becomes our natural understanding, that natural attitude, what will happen is that we start thinking ourselves to be smaller and smaller. And when I say ourselves, here we refer to our body-mind personality. So as we think of ourselves smaller and smaller, and as we start developing more devotion, not necessarily ritualistic, although rituals are the beginning stages of bhakti, in reality bhakti is nothing but love, nothing but unconditional universal love. That is what is called Bhakti Yoga. In fact, one of the Tamil saints called Tirumular, he has said that Anbe Shivam. Anbe Shivam means God is nothing but love. He didn't say love is God. He said God is nothing but love. Right? So when we start developing such love, such unconditional love and fervor towards our favorite deity, examples are Mirabai, Andal, who had such strong love towards their favorite deity, which was Krishna. There is Ramadas that we know, all the Alvars and Nayanmars that we know about. They had such intense love, such intense fervor towards their respective deities. Whether it is Shiva or Vishnu, it really doesn't matter. Right? What matters is such intensity of devotion, intensity of love, that we don't need anything else. We just want to be in the presence of that God. We just want to be one with that God. We just want to be with the God. That's it. We don't care about the car, we don't care about the family, we don't care about our day-to-day needs, we don't care about the problems that we face in our office. All we care about, all we think about, all we love is to be one with the God. So even though we can live in the society without running away from it, even though we can live in the society taking care of all the responsibilities towards it, if there is in the background always running like the Shruti note in music, that one thought that is always yearning towards the higher self or the higher being or the Almighty, that is bhakti. So as more and more of this yearning starts, even emotionally we become so filled with love that we start seeing our favorite deity in everything around us, in everyone around us, and naturally we start expressing the same amount of love towards everyone and everybody as we would express towards our own God. That is Bhakti Yoga. And as we develop such fervor, as we develop such love, as we start seeing divinity in everything around us, our mind, body, personality takes a backseat. We start experiencing ecstasies. We start experiencing the presence of God around us. We start feeling them. We start interacting with them. This is not to say that we become schizophrenic. This is much more than that. It's not seeing something that is not there. It is seeing God in everything that is there. That is the difference here, right? And in such a state, because we are emotionally fully filled with love, what happens is our mind, body, personality is completely subdued, and at one stage in that ecstasy we realize that we are one with God. And when we realize that we are one with God, then we also realize that we were never separate from God, we were never different from God. And that is why I say that it is a realization. It's not something that we go and find out, we go and invent, we go and create. It's rather a realization. We realize something that is already present. We discover something that is already present. We don't go and make something up. And this is what I earlier explained as a part of this, that when we start identifying more and more with the causal body or the Anandamaya Kosha, we start experiencing and feeling that we are no longer limited to this physical frame of body, but we also feel our presence in everything around us. That is exactly what I just described in terms of Bhakti Yoga as well. Except the path where what we take to reach that state is through our emotional body, where our expression of love towards our God becomes our expression of love towards everything around us, in us and outside us. And that is devotion, the path of love, the path of God, which is Bhakti Yoga or the Bhakti Marga. Now, the next one is Jnana Marga, or the path of wisdom, the path of knowledge. So there are some of us who are not so emotional, but we are more intellectual. And Jnana Yoga is something that can really cater to those kinds of people. So we want reason, we want understanding, we want a logical explanation, and we want to find that for ourselves. And that is where Jnana Yoga comes in, for people who are a little more intellectual, who are a little more intrigued, who are a little more curious, who are a little more wanting to find out what's all this fuss about, right? So if you go and talk to a person who's a little more intellectual and start talking about God, he may be an atheist, he may be an agnostic, he may even be a theist, but then he'll just withhold his opinion. He'll just not go out so openly and so strongly like someone who's in Bhakti Yoga. A Bhakta or a devotee, he's happy to sing the praises of God wherever he is, irrespective of who is watching him, what they would think, etc. Right? On the other hand, in Jnana Yoga, a person in Jnana Yoga, he wants to understand what is this thing about God, what is this thing about myself, what is this soul, what is this mind, what is me. Am I really this body? Am I really this mind? So Ramana Maharshi is one of the modern Jnana Yoga prophets who gives a very simple and very powerful method for the people who want to follow the Jnana Marga. And that is the path of self-enquiry. What is self-enquiry? Self-enquiry is trying to sit and ask within ourselves the question, who am I? What am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is the purpose? So who is this asking these questions? Am I this body? Am I this mind? If I am this body, then the question naturally means that 10 years back the body was not the same. So the body has changed over the 10 years. So does that mean that 10 years back I was a different person? But then I feel the same personality, same existence that is there within. So there is something in me which has not changed over the period of time. So what is it? Is it the mind? Am I the mind? Then we start asking these questions and realize that mind is just a bundle of thoughts. We don't have the same set of thoughts what we had 5 minutes back. So even the mind is constantly changing. So I cannot be the mind. So am I the emotion that I feel so strongly? No, the emotions also change. So I get angry with the boss in the office, but when I come back home, I have my loving wife and my loving children, and my mood completely changes. So does that mean I am the emotion? That is also not the case. I am someone who is experiencing the emotion, but then who am I? Right? So in self-enquiry, when we start digging deep into ourselves, not merely as a mental exercise, but more as an experiential quest of going deeper and deeper within to our own source of existence, to our own essence of existence, by rejecting everything that we are not. The mind will get absorbed into it when we do such an exercise. So when we get a thought, when we start to find the root of that thought, instead of following the thought in our mind, if we start asking the question, okay, what is this thought? Where did this thought come from? When we start focusing on that, our mind and awareness get absorbed in that, and it naturally and slowly and gradually takes us back to the source where the mind originates. And where does the mind originate? It originates from the heart. It originates from the source, which is the essence of our existence. When our awareness gets absorbed into it, the mind gets subdued. When the mind gets subdued, the mind-body equation, the mind-body personality or the identity with the mind and body gets subdued. Then what remains is pure awareness or pure existence. This is the method of Jnana Yoga, or which is called the path of wisdom. We discussed about the 3 different types of yoga, which is the Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga. We have one more called Raja Yoga, or which is also called Kriya Yoga, which we will discuss in the next session, because that we are going to go in a little deeper. Now, because there are these different means of different paths to reach the highest, to reach the goal of everlasting joy and bliss, which is also called as Satchidananda, the nature of realization, the nature of the oneness with cosmic union is called Satchidananda. Sat is truth, and by truth here what we mean is that which is always constant. Chit is Chit is consciousness. So not just the waking consciousness. So what we mean here is the consciousness that lies behind as a background in the state of Turiya and Turyadita, which is independent of the three states of existence for us that we are generally familiar with. The three states are Jagrat, which is the waking state, Swapna, which is the dream state, and Sushupti, which is the deep sleep state. Turiya is the state which is underlying all these three states, so which is independent of all these three states. And Turiya Tita is when we go beyond and transcend all these states, including Turiya. Right? Now, how do we reach that? So that state is, the nature of that state is Satchidananda, Sat being truth, which is always present, always constant. Chit meaning that state is nothing but pure consciousness and pure awareness. And then Ananda means what is the nature of this Sat and Chit? That is Ananda, which is everlasting bliss or joy. So that is why they call it as Sat Chit Ananda, together forming Satchidananda. Now in Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga and also in Jnana Yoga, the paths may be different. And based on my explanation, it might look like they are completely different to each other. But in reality, they all come and merge at one point where the mind-body equation drops. And when we start realizing that we are the highest self that is existing through us. And we are no longer this mind, we are not just this mind and body, we are much more. And that state is common, that state is a melting point for all the four margas of yoga. Right? So one might think that Jnana Yoga is quite dry, it lacks emotion, it lacks faith, there's no love. In the beginning it might be so, it might be very intellectual exercise. But for a person in Jnana Yoga, as he progresses in his path, the more and more, deeper and deeper that he goes within himself, the closer and closer he gets to his true essence, what happens is more and more his personality changes and more love starts to flow out. The heart opens and the jnani automatically becomes a bhakta as well. The person following the path of wisdom automatically starts becoming a person following path of devotion as well. And the vice versa applies to a devotee in Bhakti Yoga. A person who is in deep love with his deity, in deep love with the divinity, he might not be so intellectual, he might not apply logic, he might just go with, it might look from the outside that it is just blind faith, right? It may be so in the beginning, but as he realizes his closeness, as he realizes his oneness towards the end of his journey, what happens is he also realizes that he is not separate from the divinity. In fact, he is one with the divinity, which is nothing but self-realization, which is also common for Jnana Yoga. So, Bhakti is not different from Jnana, and Jnana is not different from Bhakti. Without Bhakti, Jnana is not complete, and without Jnana, Bhakti is not complete. Ramana Maharshi says Bhakti and Jnana are one and the same. It is fools who think that these are different. Right? Same is the case with Karma Yoga. And selfless love develops as we perform selfless charity, selfless service. Right? And when love develops, automatically we start seeing divinity in everything that we love. And so Karma Yoga merges with Bhakti Yoga as well. And in the end, when the mind-body consciousness drops, same story. Once again, we realize the same divinity in all the paths that we take. Now, so which is the right path for me? We don't know that. So every person's individuality, every person's maturity is different. So generally the gurus or the teachers, the real teachers who have themselves realized the self, they will know, looking at the person, what suits them. And in most cases it will be a combination of these paths. Little bit of bhakti, little bit of jnana, little bit of self-inquiry, and little bit of charity and service, and little bit of Raja Yoga as well, which we will discuss later. Right? So the ratio is what will differ from person to person. For some people it might be 50% Karma Yoga, 30% Bhakti Yoga, 10% of Jnana Yoga, and 10% of Raja Yoga. For somebody else it could be 80% of Jnana Yoga, 10% of Bhakti Yoga, 5% of Karma and 5% of Raja Yoga. So that may vary completely from person to person, right? So there is no one right method, there is no magic pill here. So for everybody, we relate to certain things. So we can start following that which we can relate closely to, and also slowly incorporate the other aspects or the aspects from the other path as well. And there is nothing like this is the best path and that is not so good, right? It is whatever works for us. So there is a quote, a famous quote that I would like to state here, which is, take what is useful, discard what is not, right? So what is useful for us might not be useful for somebody else, and what is useful for somebody else might not be useful for us. This doesn't belittle either the path that the other person takes, or doesn't make our path any greater than the other person's either. To quote Swami Vivekananda, as all streams, irrespective of where they originate, irrespective of the different paths they take, different terrains they flow to, all of them finally merge in the ocean. So also the different religions and different paths of yoga that different people take will also finally take us to the same destination, which is realizing the divinity within. So in the next session, which will be next week, we will discuss more about the path of Raja Yoga, or the royal path, or the path of Kriya Yoga, where we will discuss a little more in detail of the lineage that I come from, which is Babaji's Kriya Yoga, which was originally founded by Marshal Govindan Sachidananda, who himself is a student of Yogi Ramaya, who founded the Babaji Sangha. We will discuss more in detail on how Raja Yoga works and what are the different aspects of Raja Yoga or Kriya Yoga, and how in this case Babaji's Kriya Yoga incorporates aspects from the other paths as well, such as Karma, Bhakti, as well as Jnana Yoga, and how it is a complete and integrated system of yoga in itself. Thanks a lot for watching, thanks a lot for following. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can always write to Siddha Heartbeat or Agastyavanam, through which you are watching this podcast. Thanks a lot, Namaste, and have a great evening. Thank you.